Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for Fantasy Premier League content for the 2020-21 season. My name is Dan and today we're talking all about captains in Game Week 10. So this is going to be the last video before Game Week 10 actually begins, and we're going to do a stream obviously tomorrow, but here it is, the captain's video. Really interesting one again this week, so with some slightly different options coming into play this week, which is going to be quite interesting. I think I'm going to have some different opinions that you might like, you might not like, but I'm really interested to see what you think. But if you do enjoy the video today, please do drop a big thumbs up on the video. It's really helpful if you do that, and if you're new around here, please do consider subscribing as well. I'd really appreciate that. But before we go on to Game Week 10's captains, let's have a little recap on how we did last week with our captaincy decisions in Game Week 9. So, looking through it, there's some hits and there's some misses. I mean, to be fair, the hits are big hits. The good scores are good scores, but the bad scores are very, very disappointing. So Jack Grealish didn't do the business against Brighton, and I think we kind of need to learn by now, don't captain players against Brighton. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit in a second, but only 1 point, so pretty disappointed there. Sadio Mane, that's really disappointing. For Liverpool to get 3 goals and Sadio Mane to not be involved in any, the only point he got was for the clean sheet, so 3 points there, so really disappointing there. We thought he might be able to do the business in Salah's absence, but maybe not, maybe not. And we've got Dominic Calvert-Lewin versus Fulham, the player I said is statistically most likely to get a big score this game week. I probably should have put him as number 1. I probably should have captained him myself if I thought that. You know, let's not cry over spilt milk or dwell on that too much. But he got 13 points, so I guess that's a really good prediction, because he did look statistically like he was really going to be a really good option that game week. But because he wasn't a premium player, I didn't put him higher up the list, and I didn't captain him myself. So we'll hopefully learn from that mistake. And, yeah, go from there. Bruno Fernandes, you know, always has that knack of getting points. And he's done it again. Fair enough, he was fairly creative in that game, but he got the points from the retake of a penalty that he scored. But it's just a classic Bruno Fernandes haul. Always scores your points no matter what the circumstance. He just manages it. It's quite hilarious, really. But, yeah, there you go. 11 points there, so very nice. And then Hakim Ziyech. I kind of felt this one was a little bit unfortunate, because I think out of the players on this list, he played really, really well. He played really well. He could have easily got a goal if Werner had crossed the ball to him across the goalkeeper a little bit better. If he squared it a little bit better, then Ziyech would have had that on a plate. He created a couple of really nice chances where one, for example, Tammy Abraham had like a free header. He should have scored that. A couple of other chances that Ziyech created as well. Really kind of disappointing. It just kind of wasn't his day. But he did look really good, really positive. So, you know, if you've got him in your team, you should be happy to keep him, because he's looking really good at the moment. Really, really impressive player. But there you go. Some hits and misses last week. But let's see if we can do a little bit better this game week. I think we can. And we're going to start you off with my 5th best, and we're going to work all the way up to my number 1 captain pick for this game week. So let's start with number 5, and that is Raheem Sterling. Now, we probably would have to say that Sterling has been one of the disappointments of the season so far, but class is permanent, isn't it? And it's not like he's never going to score big in FPL ever again. The fact is, City had a short pre-season, a slow start to the league, and a difficult run of fixtures so far. It is time for things to change. They've got to change eventually, and whilst you might say De Bruyne, he's the big game player, perhaps that means Sterling is good for the smaller games. Burnley at home, that's a pretty small game, and given Burnley's poor form so far this season, you would say that City should have this win wrapped up. So City, they've kind of been unlucky not to score more goals so far this season, and Burnley have been pretty lucky to have conceded as few as they have. So over the last 5 games, Burnley have an expected goals conceded of 7.13, and with an actual goals conceded of just 4. They've conceded the 4th most shots in the league, with 70, 8.4 shots on target against them per game, and plenty more than that, but just loads in the box. A few chances from set pieces, a fair few headed attempts as well from crosses in. Overall, the defensive stats look, I guess, below average, yet they're not conceding a huge amount of goals. And I put this down to 2 things, really. Firstly, fixtures. So the 3 games where Burnley have not conceded a goal in the past 5 were West Brom, Brighton and Palace without Zaha. So these are not exactly the toughest fixtures, are they? When they played a difficult team in Chelsea in Game Week 7, they lost 3-0. So you can see that they are starting to look a little bit worse than the stats suggest already. And the stats didn't look particularly good in the first place. Then we have the Nick Pope factor. He's been a quality keeper for them, and he's made a lot of really important saves. In fact, only Areola at Fulham and Ramsdale at Sheffield United. Areola was on 24, Ramsdale on 23. Those guys are the only guys who have made more saves than Pope on 22 over the last 5 game weeks. So Pope is making a lot of saves. So guess what? Pope is apparently not going to be playing. Apparently he is unlikely to play against City due to a head injury he sustained on Monday against Palace. So Burnley, they're going to have to play a reserve keeper, aren't they? So we can see now, by delving deep into both the stats and some variable factors, that a game against Burnley is actually a little bit nicer of a fixture to captain a player than you might think. I don't want to call Burnley whipping boys necessarily, but you can see why 4 goals conceded in 5 games isn't really a sign of things to come. So I did want to cover Burnley in quite some detail there, as spoiler alert, this is not the only City player we're going to be talking about in this video, and it's nice to cover it nice and early on in the video, then we can crack on and talk about the players a little bit more. But let's talk about Sterling very briefly. So Raheem Sterling, recently he hasn't been in great form. I can't lie to you, if you're captaining him in this game week, you're really targeting the fixture and obviously relying on Sterling to get back to form. In the past 5 games, he's only had 4 starts. In those 4 starts, he's only got 1 return, 6 shots in the box, 6 shots in general, I think, 5 shots in the box, 3 on target, and 2 of them big chances for an XG of 1.24. It's not great. 2 key passes, 1 big chance created for an expected assist of 0.76. Again, that's really not something, that's not really special at all, is it? So if you're going for Sterling, you do so in the hope that this is the game that he regains his form. And that's why this is kind of a bit of a punt. And I have to put him 5th on my list. Arguably, I really should be putting Bruno Fernandes as 5th. Based on stats alone, Bruno Fernandes has been in really good form. And he's always collecting those points. But away to Southampton is statistically worse as an away game for an attacking player. You know, it's probably the worst away game an attacking player could play, to be honest, judging by stats so far this season. So I think for that reason, Sterling potentially edges it a little bit. Plus, you are with Bruno often relying a little bit on the luck factor, you know, getting those penalties and stuff like that. But he does have more to his game, I have to say. But still, Sterling just about edges it, and I guess Bruno would be the unofficial 6th on this list. But yeah, let's move on to number 4, Mo Salah. So I've just mentioned that Southampton is statistically the worst away game an attacking player can play. Well, guess what the second worst is? It's Brighton. So Brighton have the 2nd least expected goals conceded this entire season when playing at home in the league. Only 3.68 expected goals conceded in 4 home games. Now, 2 of these home games were against Chelsea and Manchester United. So even against the tough teams, they're still keeping that expected goals conceded nice and low. But with Salah, he's kind of a better player than Bruno is, and Brighton slightly easier than Southampton. That's why I think Salah makes the list in a unideal fixture and Bruno doesn't. But guys, I put him at 4th. He's 4th on the list for a reason, and the reason is, like I said, Brighton is not an easier fixture. As I guess we probably thought at the start of the season Brighton would be an easier fixture, but I'm not sure that it actually is. And we kind of need to get our heads around that. We need to, you know, really accept the fact that Brighton are not the easy team that we sort of typically think of them as. So Salah versus Brighton it's not a situation where it's super obvious we absolutely must captain Salah. Yes, he is a candidate for your captain's armband, but at least have a think about the other options. So Brighton, over the last 5, they've got the 5th lowest expected goals conceded with 5.18. That's only beaten by United, City, Chelsea and Wolves. Against that, they've conceded 5. So they're pretty consistent with that, as their expected goals conceded with their actual goals conceded as well. You could argue that they've had some nice fixtures, so that's why they haven't conceded many. Early on in the season, in the tougher games, they were actually conceding goals a little bit more than their expected goals conceded. So it's really a case of whether you think they've improved at the back, or is it down to the opposition. The fact is, though, that Brighton have conceded the fewest shots of any team over the duration of the season, excluding Man City, who have played a game less, but it's pretty close anyway. That stat also includes when they played the tougher teams. This also means that they've got the lowest shots conceded in the box of all teams. They've got the lowest shots on target against them too. So basically, when you play Brighton, you don't get as many chances to score. So what you need to be against a Brighton team is to be a clinical player. And what I mean by that is a team or a player who only needs a few chances and they will score from those few chances. Kind of like what you'd expect from Heung-min Son, maybe Aubameyang. I'm not sure that Salah fits that description. I know he's a very good finisher, but he does kind of take a lot of shots and arguably requires a lot of shots to get those goals. But this kind of works both ways. Maybe a player who takes a lot of shots is exactly what you need against Brighton, where other players might be less willing to shoot from these less dangerous positions. I don't know. Of course, we do have the penalty factor with Salah, which seems to be really important this year. This kind of assumes that Milner doesn't take the penalties when he's on the pitch too. I guess there's a small risk there. One of if not the greatest player in the Premier League over the past few seasons, though, is Salah. This is Salah. So all of those negatives is kind of navigated by the Salah factor. He's like been one of the best FPL assets for years, and you sort of have to back him no matter what the circumstances. He's probably got a pretty good record against Brighton. I don't usually pay too much attention to that, but his stats in recent game weeks, they look great too. So 4.16 expected goals in his last 5 starts and 2.11 expected assists. So more than an expected return per game. That's really nice. It's kind of up to you guys, really. Like I said, I don't want to necessarily tell you not to captain Salah. If I did, like, obviously he wouldn't make the list. He's 100%. He's worth considering if you have him in your team. But I would encourage you to at least have a little think about some of the other options and have a look at the other options that I've got in this video. Because Salah captain, kind of, at least as far as I'm concerned, is definitely not a no-brainer this game week. And there are some players I think are much more likely to be no-brainers in terms of who you should captain. So let's have a look at them. Next up, number 3, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, the legend of last game week that never was. So I'll start you off by saying that I'm not expecting as many points this game week as I was expecting last game week. Obviously it could happen, but statistically, and yes, I'm using the S word again, he doesn't look as likely to haul in this game week against Leeds than he did last game week against Fulham. But that said, I do think there's going to be goals in this game. Both Everton and Leeds have proven to be strong attacking teams with weak defences, so you'd expect both of them to kind of play to their strengths. That's going to mean a nice open game. Goals and, you know, both, it's going to be really favourable to the attacking players in each of these teams. And who's the best attacking player in each of these teams? Well, I guess put those two teams combined, who's the best attacking player FPL-wise? It's Dominic Calvert-Lewin, isn't it? So he's joined for top goals over the past 5 games with 4 goals, but his consistency has been it's just been consistent throughout this whole season. You could arguably just call him a safe pick because he seems to just get a return every game week. 2.19 expected goals over the past 5, which puts him in the same region as sort of Vardy, Salah, Fernandes, except he doesn't take penalties. So we're not going to be crossing our fingers and hoping for penalties to boost our odds. In fact, over the past 5 games, only Bamford beats him for non-penalty expected goals. Which is interesting because obviously Bamford is going to be also in this exact game, but I just feel like Bamford is such a rogue captain choice. I'm not saying Bamford would be a bad captain, but I'm certainly not comfortable recommending him in a video like this. But perhaps that's the same as me talking about Calvert-Lewin last week. Just because he wasn't a premium player, I didn't put him high up the list. Maybe Bamford should be in this list, but that would be a rogue choice. You know, really cheap budget player. You know, doesn't really have that quality that some of the other players that we usually talk about have. I don't know. It would be really rogue, and I'm not going to put him in this list. But Bamford, if you're really fancying Bamford, you could go for him. He's not going in this video though. But so that leaves us with Calvert-Lewin. So interestingly, recently he hasn't really been attempting or scoring as many headed goals, which is kind of good because Leeds don't actually concede that many chances from headed attempts. His output hasn't dropped though. He's still shooting sort of 3 times per game, but the chances are of very high quality. The vast majority are in the box, and it's kind of like 1 big chance per game. Leeds defensively, 9 goals conceded in their past 5. Only Everton and Newcastle have conceded more in this period. They don't concede a huge amount of chances, but they do concede a lot of big chances, almost 3 per game. So this does look pretty good for Calvert-Lewin. It's going to be an exciting game, and it's going to be a great game to own the strikers in this game. But for captain, Calvert-Lewin looks like a really good option, and I do prefer him to going for like Sterling or Salah. But he's not the best. We've got 2 more better options for you today, so let's crack on with them. Number 2, Kevin De Bruyne. So I promised you another Man City player, and who else but Kevin De Bruyne, the standout Man City man. Top point scorer from last season. A slow start to this season, but he has kind of been a little bit unlucky with fixtures, missed games. His underlying stats suggest that he should be scoring a few more points, to be fair. What we end up with then is a bit of a sleeping giant of a player that few will have the courage to go for. Does that make him a differential captain? Maybe. Does that make him a bad captain? Absolutely not. We've spoken a little bit about Burnley already, how they've been okay against weaker teams but struggled against Chelsea, for example, how they're overperforming their expected goals conceded, how they're arguably, you know, their best player and their rock in goal is Nick Pope. He's going to be missing out in all likeliness. So I think we've already established that this home game against Burnley is a great fixture for De Bruyne. So why is De Bruyne the man I would be going for in this game? He's only started 3 of the last games out of the last 5. So looking at his stats from the past 5 games, that kind of doesn't do him full justice. We're better off looking at the past 3 games, or maybe looking slightly before that. But in his past 3 games, when he started each of those games, he's had 13 shots, 1 big chance, and an XG of 0.98. 8 key passes, 3 big chances created, and 1.68 expected assists. These 3 games were against Sheffield United away, Liverpool at home, and Spurs away. So not exactly easy fixtures. And I know he blanked in that last game against Spurs, which has put a lot of people off, particularly if you didn't watch the game. But his stats versus Spurs, 6 shots, 4 in the box, 3 key passes and 2 big chances created. That's really nice. And what's particularly nice about that is the amount of his shooting in the box. We don't always think about De Bruyne as a guy who shoots, but more of a creative player. So it's really nice to see him taking lots of shots. And he can also put a similar performance against Burnley. And if he does, we could easily see a 10 or more point haul easily. And that's kind of what I'll be counting on, because KDB, he's going to be my captain for this game. We've got penalties as well, of course. But there is one player I prefer to KDB, and if I had him, I'd be captaining him. Unfortunately, I'm going to be going for KDB. But, you know, I'd definitely be captaining this last guy. And if you have him, you're in for a treat. Who do you think it might be? It's my number 1 pick, Jamie Vardy, the goal machine versus Fulham. The goal conceding machine. What could go wrong, right? It sort of seems like a bit of a match made in heaven to a degree, doesn't it? Now, you guys who have watched my channel before will know I've not been too keen on Vardy early on in the season. It sort of seemed like the only chances to score he was getting were from penalties. And I didn't believe these penalties would keep coming Leicester's way. Forever, anyway. I guess firstly, they have kept coming. Maybe there's something in the Leicestershire air that stinks of penalty decisions. I don't know. But more importantly, Vardy has started to impress a little bit more and be a bit more involved in games from open play in these more recent game weeks. And this is exactly what we like. So Vardy, in the past 5, he didn't play at all in game week 5. So let's do the past 4. But even then, he only got 30 minutes in game week 6. We'll include it anyway. Despite that, Vardy is number 1 for expected goals during that time with 4.00 XG in 4 games. 11 shots, 9 in the box, 8 on target, but insanely, 7 of those were big chances. So that's well over 2 big chances per 90 minutes. But what's perhaps a little bit surprising is that Vardy's creative stats, they look pretty good over this period as well, which kind of reminds me of what he was doing last season, providing loads of goals throughout with a nice little bit of creativity on the side, just a little bit, just to top it up. So 4 key passes, 2 big chances created for an expected assists of 1.32. He also got 2 assists in that period, so he's overperformed that a little bit. Finally, number 1 for expected points over the past 4 game weeks. It's a stat I don't usually use, but I thought I'd let you guys know anyway, just in case you're interested. He's number 1 for expected points. But anyway, just in case you needed convincing on how bad Fulham are, 3rd worst for expected goals conceded over the past 5 with 9.71. This is kind of made even more hilarious by the fact that 4 out of 5 of those games were against Sheffield United, Palace, West Brom and West Ham. An insane 31 shots on target against them, a mad 15 headed attempts against them, and a crazy 13 big chances against them. All in this 5 game period. They should have been fairly tame on them defensively, but alas, it wasn't. So I imagine Vardy, he's going to absolutely terrorise this Fulham team, and it's a fantastic opportunity for you Vardy owners to kind of shoot up the ladder. So if you have Vardy, I do recommend you go for him as your captain, and I, of course, will be very jealous of you guys. So yeah, good luck there, guys. Really good luck. So there you go. There is those are my 5 captain picks. Let me know what you think of them. Let me know who you're going to be going for, and let me know if you think I've missed anyone off this list, or maybe you'd reorder things slightly. I'd be interested to see your top 5s in the comments. So do let me know. I'd be really interested. I'll read pretty much all of the comments. So always interested to see what you guys have for me. If you did enjoy this video or find it helpful in any way, please do give a big thumbs up on the video. It's really helpful for the channel. If you did enjoy the video and you've not watched my videos before, maybe consider subscribing. Loads of FPL content on here to try and help you guys out and do a little bit better in your mini leagues, overall ranking, whatever you're aiming for. I'll try and help you out as much as I can. And other than that, if you want to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, join my mini league or support me on Patreon, all the links are in the description. You can join my channel by pressing the join button if you're on desktop. And I'm going to see you guys tomorrow for a deadline stream at 5:30 PM GMT. Just before deadline, we're going to do a nice little hour-long stream, as we usually do, where I'm going to be making some final changes to my team, because as you guys know, Digne is now injured. He's in my team. He's got to go. Zaha has been confirmed not playing. He's got to go as well. So Who am I going to be bringing in? We'll talk about that in the stream. Perhaps we'll talk about it on Twitter as well. And maybe I'll post something on YouTube as well at some point. But I've not actually locked in any transfer or made any final decisions yet. So don't want to mislead you guys. So I will try and post something on Twitter or on YouTube or whatever. But definitely try and join me for that deadline stream tomorrow if you're available. And yeah, I'll see you then. But thank you so much for watching, guys. Don't want to go on for too much longer. And until I see you tomorrow, I suppose it's a big goodbye. And thanks for watching. And I'll see you tomorrow, mates. Bye-bye.